Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, just gotta bring it up in the... Alright. Oh, and I have to share it on your, hold on.
Did you make like a PowerPoint or something?
Kind of. It's really just a bunch of screenshots thrown into PowerPoint because I could have made a whole PowerPoint, but like I forgot. I should have done that. I should have made like a actual proper PowerPoint, but this will have to do. It's really just a bunch of screenshots. All right. So let me tell you about Zecilwenshe. So you were saying during your tier list that Zecilwenshe is a homunculus made by Icy. That is not true. He was actually a regular person at one point. With this, because of this dialogue here, over your average human, I've got increased musculature, stronger bone structure, larger brain capacity, better vision and hearing, faster reflexes, and nerves of steel. Only cost me half my lifespan. So at one point, he was a regular person because this indicates that he paid in lifespan for those things. The Japanese text is basically the same thing, except instead of only cost my half my lifespan is an incidental. The translation is something like incidentally a lower life expectancy or something like that, something to that degree. It's more or less the same thing in different words. So Zecil was a regular person at one point, and this is really, really important to why he's not just like just a killing machine who exists just to kill. There's a lot more going on with him because Icy didn't just make him to just kill people. He only did that metaphorically by taking this person who we don't know anything about Zecil before we meet him in the story. So we don't know what his history is, but we kind of get sort of an idea of what his mindset is and like why he chose to do this, like why he decided to basically become Icy's like human, assassin, human in the form of a virus in the form of a human, basically. It's important also to point out that even though he is like completely obsessed with fighting, he's also very, very smart. He says this is literally his first interaction with Baron, where he says to him, "You're more benevolent than I thought. I better keep picking that sweet brain of yours." So he enjoys like talking to and understanding the people that he's fighting just as much as actually fighting them. So he's not just there to kill people. Actually tries to like understand his opponents and understand like who they are and how they think. He does actually care about the people that he fights. And I think there's something to that. I think that's like his way of, that's like how he can best get to know someone is through a fight, and by, kind of like this interaction with Baron is a good example, because they're having a real conversation like while they fight, and he's trying to finding out like how Baron thinks and like what his stances on things are. So, okay, so here is where we get into Zecil's like how he views the world. And I think this is actually a good one to start with. In reality, there ain't no good or evil. All history extols as its grandest victors. What is morality but a figment of society's imagination? And why he thinks this way is... So when Ilgano is like, when he confronts Ilgano is like, "Oh, you killed me and my family." He just responds with, "In Reveal, a human life is worth as much as a rat's caboose. Do you think your family deserves special treatment?" Like, what was special about Ilgano and her family compared to everybody else in the Rail? She's just, to him, like, human beings aren't special, because that's just kind of the environment that Reveal exists in, right? It's just like people are dying all the time. Nobody's life really matters, because people are just dying all the time, and everything just kind of continues on the way it is. The only people that really, matter are the Titans, and everyone else is just, is just a number. Nobody, whether anybody else lives or dies, it's like the world just keeps on because only the Titans are really the ones that have any impact on the world. So here's where we get into, I think, why Zecil basically decided to take the path that he did. And it has also to do with here's another one kind of related to the morality, related to that and to the morality. Always categorizing things, tying them to something familiar, trying to understand them. Why? Is it because you all are afraid of the big, bad unknown? The one thing, I think you're the one lacking in understanding. Have you ever thought about why something is wrong? No, right? I reckon your mom taught you, and they took their words at face value. People ascribe such silly descriptions to things which make them uncomfortable. Evil is just another word for misunderstood. I would know all too well. Why would Zecil know that? Terrors like us were born of shades of despair. Is basically saying to Ilgano, we're not that different. We're both kind of born of despair. So what did Zecil go through prior to becoming as we know him that made him believe that he was born from despair in the same way Ilgano was? And the answer is we don't know, though I have a theory. Don't you see, I am myself, but I ain't. I belong on the battlefield, but I don't belong to myself. I think this is going back to, I think, his devotion to Icy. So I think what Icy, and this is gonna kind of go into my theory that I'll explain in a moment. So I theorize that Zecil, especially with this belong on the battlefield, but I don't belong to myself. The only path to prove my existence is through the lives I take. We die and we die and we die until we're born again, and only then can you grasp triumph. So I think this is referring to his connection with Icy. So Icy is basically the person that allowed Zecil to be who he is, and in more ways than one. And like we die, and hope we're born again. So you think that, oh, it's because Zecil is dying over and over again. But think about who else has died over and over again and is still trying to win, quote unquote, trying to grasp triumph. It's Icy. So Icy is somebody that he can relate to in that sense. But I also think that Zecil sort of experienced, but I think the reason for that is because Zecil experienced a sort of death before, you can't see it, but I'm making finger quotes here. A death before he became Zecilwenshe, before he became the person we know him as. So, here's why I'm going into this. This is, now keep in mind, this is just my theory, but as a person who also can, maybe you could say this is just projecting, but this is what I theorize and what I interpret based on what he says, and also how I can kind of relate it to things in my own life, and how I can understand like the thought, I can understand the thought process. And here's why I think this. I think Zecil is queer or transgender, or something rough equivocal to that in Reveal. It might not be like literally that in Reveal. I think it might be something along those lines. Like he was some kind of person there was something about himself that he was not allowed to be true to. He was not allowed to be true to himself in some way or the other. To me, that reads as queer or trans, because that's also kind of my own situation. This is a situation that's really, really relatable to me. And in my own position as being trans masculine, kind of been basically forced into the closet my entire life by my family, who did not want to accept this. And it's things like saying, have you ever thought about why something is wrong? No, right? I reckon your family told you and who took their words at face value. Always categorize, are you afraid of the unknown? Asking, are you afraid of the unknown? Evil is just another word for misunderstood. I know all too well. So he was not allowed to be the person that he wanted to be because it was categorized as by maybe his family, maybe just people around him, as evil. Somebody basically tried to drive it into Zecil's head that because he was different, that he was evil. So that is how, and when he eventually, comes across to Icy, makes this deal with Icy is the one to tell him, that's all bullshit. You can be who you want to be, and because all of their morals are a joke. Yeah, there ain't no good or evil. All history extols its grandest victors. And it makes sense why Icy would think that, right? Because Icy has been, the one in power for so long, and he believes in this divine right that he has to rule over Reveal, and that and that everything he does is justified because he has, the divine right to rule over Reveal. So why would that not mean he's the good guy, quote unquote, or the one in the right? So this is what I'm getting at is, so basically Icy said to Zecil and allowed him to be the person that he wanted to be, his true self, through this entire deal of taking half his lifespan and making him into this guy, making him into the infestation that would go and, carry out Icy's plans and allow him to just, kind of express himself in every single way that he wanted, because he ensured that Zecil is, everyone is wrong, you're the one who's right, as long evil is just what these people in Revale call me evil because they don't understand me. They don't understand that I am their god and that I am going to be the one to, bring Revale up to, once my plan succeeds, I'll become the full god of Revale again, and I will, take away all of the problems of the world, and just nobody gets it. The same way nobody gets you. That is where the connection with Icy and Zecil comes, and that helped to form into who Zecil is. And basically, there's a really strong there's a really good comparison. I don't know how much you know about Princess Connect, but so Omniscient Kaiser, she has a leader in Shadowverse, but she is another villain. She's basically one of the main villain of that game. Here's another. This is kind of another reason why I think this, because this is because I've seen this because I saw this in another Cygames property and with another Cygames character. So Kaiser is a trans woman who has been struggling with gender dysphoria for like a really, really long time, and she's the cousin of Carol. From, I think, even if you don't know Princess Connect, Carol, because she's one of the main characters. So Carol is her cousin, and they used to be very close. And there are points in the story where Carol describes basically what her cousin has been going through, and she describes it as gender dysphoria. Like they used to be really close, and then Kaiser started experiencing really extreme dysphoria, and it drove a wedge between them and their relationship. And really strained on their relationship, and it made Kaiser like really, really shitty to Carol. So because she was just struggling with this. Plot of the first Princess Connect, there's this entity called Minerva, and she will basically grant a wish to anyone who completes this game that was developed by I think Pecorine's family, if I remember correctly. Kaiser is a developer on this game, and she uses the fact that she's a developer to kind of cheat, and so she can get the wish from Minerva more easily, and she succeeds at that because as a developer, she's able to hack and cheat. So she goes up to Minerva and says, "My wish is to be a princess protected by a beautiful knight." And Minerva says, "Well, you cheated, so I can't actually grant you that wish because you didn't get it, because you didn't win the game fairly." And this causes Kaiser to flip the fuck out because this was finally her chance to kind of ascend, or to finally shed her dysphoria, because if she becomes a princess, she becomes a woman, on the outside, and she no longer she can finally be her true self. And so because Minerva won't grant her this wish, she's just fine, I'm gonna take over the game, and I'm gonna just rewrite everything to the way that I want it. And that's how we get to Redive, because it's basically Kaiser using Minerva's power. She's able to defeat Minerva or something, or get her power, and she uses that to rewrite the world, and that's how we get to Redive, the Princess Connect game that was actually translated and has the anime adaptation. All of that came around from Kaiser just desperately trying to defeat her own dysphoria and be her true self by any means necessary. She didn't care what she had to do to achieve that goal. And that's what I see in Zecil. That's what I see as him being in a situation that was so awful, that just closeted him so bad, whether he was, trans, queer, just weird in any kind of sense where other people wouldn't accept him. That made him so miserable, and he was so desperate to escape that he is willing to be completely, I don't know if brainwashed is the right word, but influenced so strongly by Icy and his own, twisted philosophies, and believe in this idea that there is no good or evil, that everything is just dependent on the victors. Anything people don't understand will just label as evil. It's okay. It doesn't matter who I kill. In fact, killing people is how I can prove I am myself, because that's what Icy gave me. Icy allowed me to be who I am, and that's what he tasked me to do. So this is my path to my expressing myself and being my true self. And I just don't care, because because everyone in Revale is just but the Titans, but Icy is just they don't matter. People die here, and it doesn't matter, and that's why he's the kind of person that he is, and why he chose to be and why he chose this path, why he chose to become the Infestation. That's it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I apologize, that was very long and a little bit rambly. I didn't have anything scripted. I just had a bunch of screenshots that I thought, kind of illustrated these points, and...
Never script anything. Why would you ever script anything? I don't script anything. Why would anyone ever do that?
Okay, so what do you think? Do you think, did I change your mind? Have I convinced you why Cecil is a good character?
Well, it goes to the same thing with the tier list. During the tier list... Unless I replay the story, which I will be soon, until I replay the story, I don't know if I can really change anything. That's how it is, right? But I have a question though. I do have one question that's more related to the human part again. I forgot there was like multiple Zecils. What's going on in this picture you have here?
Yeah. So Zecil's powers is the implication is obviously that there was an original Zecil at some point, but whoever the original body for Zecil is like long dead, because he keeps getting killed over and over and over, and because his existence is just this mana virus. As long as he has more people to infect, that he can just keep on living.
That's what it was.
Yeah. So, and all of the Zecil, and he can possess and infect multiple people at a time. And all of the Zecils, when he's possessing multiple people at a time, they're all hive mind. So yes, you can have This is what's happening here. Is there are multiple Zecils, because it's multiple people possessed by Zecil at one time, and they're all acting in synchronicity because they're a hive mind. So that's one reason why Zecil is so powerful, is because as long as he can keep infecting people, as long as he has the mana to keep infecting people, he doesn't matter how many times, he just gets new bodies.
I do want to say in my defense too, reminder, I played the story as it came out, so this was like 4 or 5 years ago.
And he never rewatched it, I guess. Yeah. I do the YouTube videos for him, so I've watched them many times.
I noticed. I'm very familiar with your videos. Thank you for that, by the way. Those are good.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. One other thing that another thing and that I have to. Well, one last thing I'll show you in defense for Zecil, is the fact that the writers themselves are also really proud of him. This is a interview with Rintaro Isozaki, who is like the main story guy in Shadowverse, and Ryuji, who's another I guess he's like kind of like the Rintaro is the scenario director, Ryuji is the scenario leader. So they're both like two of the main story guys for Shadowverse. So this was an interview they did about basically the Revale and Velsar arcs, and talking about writing them and writing the stories for these particular arcs. I want to go down to this part here. A multifaceted display molding the leaders for the new leader characters. Are there any scenes or characters that either of you were particularly proud of? Ryuji says, personally, I think Zecilwenshe steals the show in Fate's Trigger Conclusion. Even the villains in Shadowverse become popular, as has been exactly the case with Baphomet, Zecilwenshe, and Isildrik. I think it's very characteristic of Rintaro's writing that the villains really come alive. And then Rintaro says, yeah, we were asked to add Zecilwenshe later on, weren't we? And Ryuji says, that's right. At first, we were only thinking of the Titans who ruled the city as the main antagonist, but we discovered that the Titans were difficult to involve in certain situations, and if they got too involved, the story would basically collapse. So I think Rintaro had the idea for Zecilwenshe, who would be a character to fill that role. One day, we were asked to add one more character, and I remember saying, this guy moves the story forward. And Rintaro says, in my case, every character is important to me, but I really have to choose. Oh, and he also says he likes Baron. He was a difficult character to get right in terms of his action and behavior, because he's someone who maintains his status not with raw fighting ability, but determination and strength of his spirit. So, I think that's another really cool thing about Zecil, is that he, one of the lead guys in the story thinks Zecil was one of the best characters in this arc, and especially given the fact that he wasn't part of the first draft of the story. They added him later because for whatever reason, Cygames that asked them to add an additional character, and that's exactly what the story needed because, as Ryuji said, he was if the story didn't really work the way they were envisioning, if the Titans got too involved with certain scenarios, so they kind of needed a guy to help move the story forward in a way so the Titans didn't have to get too involved until the important moments where they would be involved. And that's why they put Zecil in, and he filled a very important role in that respect in saying this guy moves the story forward. So that's just another thing that I think is really cool and I wanted to bring up. This is a really cool interview. If anyone wants to read if anyone wants to read it in full, I will link it on the Discord. Thank you so much, Sherio, for the match. That was a great match.
It was the second. That third game though.
That third game was. I'm so sorry.
No. That's Shadowverse. That's peak Shadowverse.
That's Shadowverse, baby.
Shadowba Tanoshi.
Shadowba Tanoshi.